Hello everyone, it's Cheryl Millett here, live at 5 Mondays. This will be I believe, the last one of the year. Yes, next Monday have something going on, something family, so I'm going to be doing that. So welcome to Live at 5, where all things are healthy, and I have lots of fun to have with this technology. Technology is really cool, or not, but anyway, you'll notice that I have been not necessarily quiet, but not on so much, and partially it's to do with taking on a new client, and it is a dozen or more hours. It was the kind of thing that just dropped into my lap, but I'm not going to talk too much about it because of personal information, clients, client personal information, and yeah, all this technical stuff. So what are we going to, what am I going to bring up as our usual format is something completely new, something different, and then go into some of the news or some things I think is interesting to unpack so we can learn together, and then what can we laugh about? The puns, the jokes, those kind of things. So let's get to it. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about, partially because it's my experience, and we can get things out of the experiences that we have. So garden project, just to kind of go back in time, this past summer, and learned about a whole host of plants just because I had the picture this app and learning what things, or sometimes people would mention it. But one of the things that I learned about was mullein. Now this isn't what I collected, but I compared with what I collected. So this is mullein, and I can kind of find sticks in here, whereas the one that I collected, the leaves, it's such a bright green compared to this. So you have to understand that how things sometimes are done is, maybe there was a little bit more heat here taking the mullein to dry it, whereas I did mine on very low heat in the dehydrator. But the quality is here or there, you're not quite sure. Anyway, what's so significant about mullein, to save something completely new, is that what I learned is the mullein is too thick. I mean, it's called cowboy's toilet paper for a reason. It's a very thick, plushy leaf that they call cowboy's toilet paper. I mean, it really is soft. So I learned that you couldn't really roll it in tobacco paper. It just was too fluffy, too big, nothing you could use. So you had to actually use a pipe, a tobacco pipe, so a smoking pipe, let's just call it. And so I went on a mission to find some pipes, find out pipes, how could I get pipes. And there are stores, I think this was from Oshawa, but there's a number of stores in Canada and about. But of course you have to be 21 and over. Anyway, it's lovely, and of course they have different designs and different cost points, but for some reason this one was on sale, regular 45 on for 19. But the mullein can be smoked in the pipe. Now mullein is probably one of the things smoke-wise that's really healthy and healing for the lungs. Not all people who are into herbs actually were familiar with it, but I could find easily information about it. But what I also didn't know, get the pipes, okay, good parents, start smoking them to heal their lungs. And my father tells me, because he had a handful of pipes and a whole pipe, I wish I still had it, but I probably sold it at yard sale, and you have to break them in. You have to break in the pipes for, now my father seems to think it's months, but you'll know when the pipe is broken because it'll be nice and smooth, where right now with the resin and stuff that's on the wood, it has to be almost like breaking in stoneware, stoneware and things like that. So here I'm going, great, I'll be able to have the experience of what it feels like in the lungs, and only to have to wait however long it's going to take me to smoke this. So believe it or not, I am smoking it with the mullein in it, but not inhaling until this pipe is broke in. Now I've got a couple videos I'm going to watch, but breaking in things is something that is, that's probably the key. The reason why I want to bring this up is it takes time, and it takes patience, and patience is a virtue. So think about the things that have to be broken in. I remember shoes. Didn't want to wear a new pair of shoes running the marathon. You had to break them in and wear them several times before the marathon. So then you didn't have any surprises, and it was healthy. But we used to do the shorter runs with the newer running shoes. So they were still good enough and very good for the race itself. But breaking in, then now I want to kind of bring it into the spiritual kind of way, be it spiritual is one of those words that depends on what you've heard about it, but the idea is the matters of the mind. It's probably a better word. Matters of the mind and connection and inner work and all of that is, it's patience is a virtue. It is not to be intellectualized, for sure. One quick thing I want to bring up, because then I want to kind of go from that statement I'm making about matters of the mind and breaking in to reading something in a book. I'll read that in a minute. But has anybody ever heard of lotus seeds? Popped lotus seeds. Anyway, by the time you pop it like popcorn, and by the time you put all the good flavoring on it, you're not quite sure. Let me just get one out, and I mean, very interesting to see what they actually look like in real life, but as it is, they look like they just look like a puffed thing. You can't really, and not one looks like the other, so they look very different in different sizes. So I'm not quite sure. I kind of want to look it up as to what that is. So I want to go right into. So for a handful of times I have organized and run a book club, and I call it the Awakening Book Club now. But this year in 2021, we focused on the Ringing Cedars, the Anastasia series. Now, whether she's real or not doesn't matter, but the idea is there's some really good ideas in here. That's what the idea is by me bringing it up. But the editor in the back started talking about different stories, and what I wanted to bring up is, gotta find this editor, Editors Afterwards, the Book of Happiness. So here is, I don't know if I'm going to read the whole story. It's kind of very interesting, but I do actually want to read it. So in here, this is in the Editors Afterward, this is him writing it. He says, "Papa, which do you like better, your computer or us, your family? My daughter Lada inquired of me one morning as I was sitting at work in my home office. But of course I like you better. Why?" And he's still glued to the screen. "It's just that you spend all day long in front of your computer, but I'd rather you played with me, or come see the pumpkins Mama and I planted. Even when we go for a walk all together, all you do is think about your work. You barely notice us." Well, that's true, I admitted, but I do need to earn money too, to pay for the piece of land we plant our garden on, for example. In other words, to afford things that are important in life. "Nonsense," she protested. "It's all arranged like that on purpose, so as to make you think that everything important in life you can buy for money, to make you think money's the most important thing of all." So this is a young girl saying this. As I turned to face her, Lada looked at me straight in the eye and added, tugging on my sleeve, "You know, Papa, I really feel you need to come with me to my tree house. I'll teach you 3 lessons on how to live happily ever after without money." And seeing the seriousness of the issue, I rose from the desk, and Lada took me by the hand and escorted me to her green classroom. So half an hour later, she finished delivering her 3 lessons and made sure I grasped their key concepts. Lada surprised me with a fresh demand. "And now, before you go, you must promise me that you shall never ever share what I have taught you with anybody." "Well, how come?" I queried. "If the path you outlined to me can really lead people to happiness, I thought you would encourage me to tell others about it. Don't you know about what happened with the Book of Happiness. The what Book of Happiness? Never heard of it. And Lada crossed her hands on her knees, sighed, and began telling me the story. So I want to tell you this story. Now, bear with me. Timing permit, it's a handful of pages, but it's well worth it. Well worth it. So it's a very interesting story. And we never ever get to understand the 3 lessons, but you'll get what I mean when we do this. And this is well worth it, because we've been talking about money, and basically in the world today, a lot of people's actions and time and energy is focused on money. It doesn't make money bad. It doesn't make money really good. It just makes money that we need because of the current setup on our planet to be able to buy things. And that's kind of where it's come out. You know, you're not exchanging things anymore, sharing things in the same way, and not living on little anymore, not being practical, many things. There's that. So here we go. I want to read this story. Once upon a time, in a large city with dirty, polluted air, there lived a man who had lost his happiness. It seemed as though he had searched for it everywhere, including behind the sofa and under his desk, but happiness was nowhere to be seen. It occurred to the man that his cat might have taken his happiness outside and hid it somewhere, so he searched all around his apartment block, but found nothing. Exhausted by the search, he decided to spend the following day, his day off, in the woods picking mushrooms, and so he did. And he put on his big rubber boots and his backpack and took a nice large basket woven out of willow twigs and headed off. He had a very good day and even forgot his grief over lost happiness. By the time the sun was setting, his basket was so full of beautiful large mushrooms, it was hard to lift off the ground. The man was ready to go home, but now he couldn't find his way out of the forest. There was no visible path, and he tried going in one direction, which he hoped would lead him out into the paved road, but ended up in a swamp. He had no electric torch and no flashlight, and in the fading twilight it was hard to see the way. So the man decided to spend the night in the forest and try to find his way home in the following day. He made a bed out of dry pine needles under a tall pine tree, with his backpack under his head for a pillow, and tried to go to sleep. But the mosquitoes attacked him, the good mosquitoes. You know how they are, nature's inoculators, putting sleep out of the question. So he just lied there, immersed in his thoughts. Finally, he drifted off into a dream. The man awoke suddenly in the middle of the night. The forest was dark and quiet all around, but far off in the distance, over to one side, you could make out what seemed to be a light glistening mist amidst the branches. Thinking it could be a house or a lamp-post on the road, the man picked himself up and walked in the direction of the light, slowly making his way through the darkness. After a while he found himself emerging from the dense bushes into a glade, and there was no house or lamp-post anywhere in sight, but in the center of the glade there was a moss-covered hillock, radiating a soft golden light. And as the man approached the hillock, he saw an old book in a leather binding lying on the top, and the light was coming from the book. The gold lettering on the cover read, "The Book of Happiness." He opened it and began to read, and the book opened with a promise to show the reader how to find his happiness. "Wow, this is exactly what I need," thought the man, and he hefted the heavy tomb of the moss and hurried out of the glade, taking the book with him. Perhaps it was the light coming from the book, or perhaps his own insight, but now he felt confident as to which way he should go, and indeed it wasn't long before he found the path, then the paved road, and began walking along the empty nighttime highway in the direction of the town, his mushroom-filled basket in one hand and the Book of Happiness in the other. Dawn was breaking in the sky when he reached out the outskirts of the city, and soon afterward his home. Despite his heavy load, he felt neither tired nor sleepy, and he put the basket down the front door, took off his rubber boots, and plunged onto the sofa and immersed himself in reading. He finished the whole book that same day, and it delivered on its promise. It brought him his happiness back. His happiness turned out to be lying behind the bookshelf, the only place he had not looked when searching for it. Presently he remembered that at one time he had indeed put his happiness on top of this bookshelf to save space in his small flat. Then he had added more books on top, which had apparently pushed the happiness over and caused it to fall behind. When the man, following the instructions from the book, regained his happiness, it was all covered in dust, hair, and cockroach feces, but he wiped it clean and it began to look like new once more. So as not to lose it again, he decided to carry it with him all the time. He attached it to a watch chain he brought specifically for this purpose, and now carried his happiness in his pocket. For days and weeks he found himself in a state of bliss and joy, but seeing the unhappy people all around him, on the sidewalk of the streets, in offices and shops, he could not help but go back in his thought to the very last statement contained in the book, namely, "You shall not show this book to others." So I'm going to leave it right there, and I can finish the story in a couple of weeks when we come on board, because there's actually another 5 or 6 pages. I don't mean to leave you hanging, but contemplate and ponder that last statement of this book. You shall not show this book to anyone. And, just to make it short, I mean, when he does decide to share it with people, certain things happen and they're not really understood, but inward there is an understanding. And that's the lengthy part, to get to the point where, no, it's not to be shared. And anyway, that's kind of the story, but I just kind of put that phrase, I'll put it down below. And in the new year, because not everybody was able to read the books throughout the year, got behind, that kind of thing. And there's 9 books in this series. The largest one here is it's 230 pages approximately to 280 at the end, and seem to get bigger as you go on. But over the course, once a month, but not even every month, we'd read these books. So starting again in February, early February, so we can get through them in the year, we're going to read these books again. They're very, the Ringing Cedars series is very relevant to what's going on today in the many ways on how we've got off track, and how money is, and power, and control, and even slavery, we know, modern day slavery, modern this, modern that, is really something that historically can be spoken about. But it doesn't matter if it happened 200 years, 2,000 years, 10,000 years, or it happened 2 days ago or 2 years ago. It's happening. And yes, sure, the houses look different, the clothes look different, but there is some very similar things nonetheless. If you think of happiness, happiness wasn't created at any point in time. The happiness was always available to us at all times. But certain things get distracting, certain things happen, and we're led, down whatever path we are for the reasons we are. So I wanted to kind of bring that in today, because why wouldn't you want to share something that brought you happiness? Because maybe happiness is not necessarily the same for everyone, and you got to discover your happiness, your place of feeling that. And there's so much going on these days that Hugo talks. He's such a Hugo from UK. Beside his accent, he is really pulling all the stops out, in the sense of to think about what is going on. So even in Ireland, I think there's going to be some sort of announcement on Friday, a big announcement. But as he says, they've already, let the cat out of the bag in some way. We hear this, we hear that. And again, the idea is, what is going on? I mean, you got to ask yourself that question. What is going on? It makes no sense at all. None. Nothing other than the powers and controls and powers to be saying to do things, but based on what? Based on what? Where the evidence isn't presented. China never presented the evidence to the World Health Organization, and therefore nobody else would have any evidence as well. And as some people have quickly said, who have worked for the government, there's no way this could not have been foreseen, because of the choppy into action and already prepared so quickly. That doesn't mean we want to say things are always slow within our government. There's absolutely every reason to think that it can be, but there's certain things that are happening. So some of the things that are, I guess, coming to me in essence is very key questions. Where do we come from? What was our history really, considering that the victors write the history, considering many libraries, including in the Egyptian library, in Alexandria, I believe, and I think there were other libraries too. Russia comes to mind, other Europeans, where they were completely destroyed, and yet many books are supposedly hidden away in various churches or the Vatican. And I mean, even just the lost books, as they say, for the Bible that haven't been used, and maybe it was pick and choose what you want to use and pick and choose what serves the agenda. And that is a thing as well, right? That is a thing as well. So the idea is, what is history? What, even in some ways, history can be repeated again if you don't know your history, but what if the history is crazy? And what if the history is not really as you see it to be? And really, the whole thing that's kind of going on with man is to control man, a slavery of a different color, let's call it, a slavery that is unknown to man in many ways. I call it employee slavery, because you don't have the freedom and creativity in some cases, or most cases, or it's just very mundane, extremely mundane, and sure wouldn't find the book of happiness there. It's like a means to an end. And then, of course, there's debt slavery as well. And there's, so I mean, what information have we been taught or given or even witnessed over the years to bring forth to today for the greater good of humanity? In a lot of ways, there's been a lot of stuff fed to us to keep us in fear, and to, if that's a controlling means of controlling for you to do what they want you to do, absolutely. And absolutely getting away from nature. In many aspects, we're getting away from nature, be it the idea that we can control nature, which is not to say that it's not all bad, and some of the things that we've done, or some of the things that are being done, like planting trees and so forth, but sometimes there's this overarching agenda or narrative or mission that comes into play, and that's where I think climate, the whole, even though the language have changed, the warming, the climate change, whatever language you want to use, as it kind of morphs, gives it a new spin on it. But at the end of the day, the climate is climate. It is nature responding to how we're being, and at the same time, how we're being is being not true to ourselves and not in the nature of things. And who is making that up? Well, that's the same people who want you to buy into the whole climate change and being fear of it and doing what you're told. Once again, so you can see kind of the circle there, that it's not really on the up and up at the end of the day. You buy more things, it costs more money. You do things, you don't do things, and now they want to give you a social credit kind of thing to say, well, I mean, it just reminds you of being a puppy. Good boy, you've done that. And if you haven't done it, well, we're going to punish you. And, that's even church-like, in some ways, or religion-like, or, crafted that way. Whereas if you don't do, you feel guilty, or you feel these feelings that are not really, in my mind, positive or fitting into finding, true happiness. And so that's kind of what we're in here. People thinking for themselves has gone out the window. It's got stomped on. It's buried deep, and you'd need an awful big shovel to dig it out. And maybe you'd need some more muscle than you would have because you have a desk job, or you're not really using our physical body as we need to do, and being outside and all of that. So we have this kind of scenario. So what's either coming up, and that's just kind of talk again, history, high story. What is it that we've been feeling, and what is, there's this thirst of information, and you've got to know by now that there's more than enough information out there than you'll ever learn in your lifetime, and most of it is meaningless. if you're thinking about true happiness or you're thinking about being, then in some cases, the reason why we have going out to get knowledge, I guess, or information is, yes, because you like fashion. So that can keep you extremely busy, but does it matter? I mean, does fashion matter? Should it matter? Or what it, so there's so many gadgets and so many things and big houses and fancy cars and all this stuff that we need to have that kind of information to work with it, that kind of information to fix it, that kind of information to know what to do or the next step. So information is not something we have to just throw under the carpet, because we need that in the state that we have come to be. We do need that. And this is not about running away from anything either, and that is a key point too, as well, not running away from different things. But our way we're being right now is getting away from respecting, being responsible, and even taking care of yourself. Have that breather to be all that you can be. And that is, in essence, for some people, a big pause, just like in the book with the young girl saying you seem to be obsessed with your computer, obsessed with your work, and what matters most to you is not really what you're doing. And I would like to add on to that, that as the years go by and you come to the point where you look back and all that you work for doesn't even give you happiness in that way, then you might have serious regrets. And that was my grandfather. He was 100 years old, well, 102, 101, 102 when he passed. But when I had some time alone with him, we were talking about life, and his mind was so there, but I think they had him on way too many drugs, so he seemed like he was dull. But give him time to speak. One of the things that he came out with not much me saying much, is I wish I'd spent more time with my children. So they had 6 children, he and my grandmother, and that was his thing. That's what he came out. So 100 years, I wish I had spent more time with my children. So we can learn from the wisdom of people that have gone through it, yes, but the idea is you could pause at any time in your life and ask yourself, what is most important? And if what is most important is something that you're not spending time and energy on, then maybe things have to change. And there might be a bridge that needs to happen. It might not just happen in the moment, in the second, so it's something to work towards. So allow the time and the space for things to happen that matters most to you. But the idea is to ask yourself those good questions. And common sense, you dig it out of the ground, dig it up, dig it up, and use common sense. Most people, from what I can gather in my conversations, some people, is the intellectualizing things, big time, because of that's whole information, push of information. Think about all the books that are written ongoingly on any one topic for many people or whatever. I mean, I don't even want to sit in my chair all day long and read for the thirst of knowledge I may have. No, I wouldn't want to do that. That wouldn't be any fun. No, skipping through the forest is a lot of fun. And that, so, just kind of ponder that. The other things that are kind of coming in out there, and I'm trying to not avoid the things, because certainly there are definitely a lot of information coming in that is getting people all riled up. Now, if a person is sad and they can get angry, that's even a higher vibration, believe it or not. So to get somebody angry and get them out of their funk is healthy. It's a healthy thing to do. But be mindful and impeccable and stuff. But yes, are people dying from toxins? Absolutely. And it's been a thing in a day forever and ever. If we can think about if people didn't want people around in the millennia ago, poisons were put in water, in food. I mean, it's a thing. Only thing now is people go to their GP, into their doctors, and ask for the poisons. That's the difference. They're asking for the poison. Give me some poisons or I'm going to die from these mutated cells. So it's almost as if somehow along the thousands of generations, we've gotten to a place where we don't realize the intelligence of the body. We don't realize the powers that we have. And we're actually asking for the very things unknown, unknown to the good people out there, that it is harming. Even if they knew that harm, really some people think if they don't take these toxins, these poisons, they're going to die. Now there are some truths to that, because we have such this high vulnerable population for the same reasons. We have vulnerability because people are not making their choices. They're buying whatever they want. Convenience, microwave, coffee up the yin yang. And seriously, I mean, we have all of these things going on, and the question should be, why am I sick? Why am I not feeling well? Why do I have all these symptoms? Why am I not this vibrant energy self that can look forward to all the things in life? So it's not to be feeling guilty about. That's the only things I say, and I'll say it quite this, we get it honestly. The things that I look back, I'll laugh at it. Quite frankly, we get a lot of where we are in our beliefs quite honestly, whether that's from good or bad, but these relatives, family, when people say I'm just like my mom or something like that, you get it honestly. I mean, it's through watching people, watching movies, our beliefs, hearing stories. Like, much of where we are is not anything about who we really are. It's definitely keeping us distracted and blinders on. And I get it, because there's so much information to pour over to give you a clue, understanding of how we got to where we got to. And that's a lot of information, a lot of discerning, a lot of pieces to come together. And I can see that being very, very overwhelming. People go, I just want to play cards. I just want to be able to watch my favorite show, my soap opera. I just want to, so I get it. And so we can easily come to that stage of just, how am I going to read? I mean, every single industry has their jargon. And then you'd have to learn what the jargon is, and so is it made complicated by design? Well, it makes it easier if you got to go to school for whatever 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. It makes it easier to create this jargon, because then you'll know, you can communicate with each other easily. So I get it, but then you'd have to go down that rabbit hole, and the education and how necessary that is, over and beyond just living, being, eating well, enjoying each other's companies, being with each other, pondering what nature teaches us, pondering why does the river flow that way? Whatever, these good life questions that can teach us a lot about a lot in that way. So there's definitely things coming in through the history, but also currently of today. What are we, a corporation? Is Canada a corporation? Is the U.S. a corporation? London, is London its city in itself? Is the Washington D.C., is that a city in itself, or a corporation itself? I mean, much of this information is seeping through, possibly true or not, to share with us how things have been morphed in a way, like a law, for instance. What law is an acronym. Now let me remember if I could. Yeah, this is very simple. I haven't finished watching this video, but at the end of the day, law, an acronym. Land, air, water. So the idea of constitution, or being controlled by, or documentation. Think of all the administration documentation we have on ourselves. The licenses, the pieces of paper, the ongoing. It almost seems to me that they're trying to make us feel that, great, heaven, you're going to give me a chip and all my information. I won't have to carry that wallet, that purse. This is, so it seems like to me, beyond it being a piece of paper to control or to know what you do, for you to pay taxes, which has been, from the landlords of the past, in the way you're not really your own life. And so they have all these kind of funky things, creative things, and they're probably creative. And how you can enslave men? Well, let's make it a creative process. We'll make the word law and that, all the legal jargon and everything, and how we will enslave man by paper will be just that. And we'll have them pay for whatever we need them to pay for, and taxes, and we'll keep them just at the level where they're not too rich. But we'll allow some people, if they join the club and join the group, then we'll allow those people to have their fame and to have their fortune, but not at a price, right? So you have all of that, but and that's a whole lengthy conversation. And the other thing that came in that my sister sent me was about the 3 days of darkness. So there's some of these talks where 10 days of darkness, 3 days of darkness, some to do with biblical prophecy, all of that kind of stuff. And no matter what you read or hear, the idea is park it. See how it feels for you, see how it resonates for you, because right here, right now, we don't have the 3 days of darkness, but it's an awareness, enough of awareness that if, in fact, something does happen and things go dark, whatever that means, according to what you're listening to, watching, then you have a little bit of awareness. So there's, part of the critical thinking is also having a level of awareness on certain things. But I'll tell you quite honestly, I don't need to watch another video that tells me the masks don't work. I don't really need to ever watch another video on that. I'm done with that. And I do understand at a certain level that the injections are full of toxicity. So again, that follows the narrative to keep people getting ongoing, receiving toxicity and getting sick. Very, very simple. But there's also the underlying thing, and I've talked about AI, human augmentation, the government's planting these things, and about having the, it sounds like a beautiful, glorious thing, but I mean, come on, they haven't found the cure for so many conditions, and you want to think they can tap up and wire you up like the Borg on Star Trek. No, I mean, they want to get your information, and they want to be able to change your vibration, change your, so if everything is all energy, and your energy, if certain things get into the body, they can easily change your vibration, or, in essence, screw things up, which is not going to not happen. And that's the crazy thing about it, is like getting into all these meds, it is screwing things up, and they still keep on doing it. So the idea is, to what end does that serve? To what end does that serve? Is that just an indication that man is so dead, ignorant, and not thinking for themselves, that they're just doing it because they can? I mean, that sometimes kind of gets that, gets me thinking about that. But so 3 days of darkness may very well be a place and time where there's a shift in consciousness, and that shift may involve certain things happening, a disruption to the energy, a disruption to the physical body, right? A disruption to the grid, a disruption to electricity, something like that. And but just to be, so I'm just telling you, no matter what happens, I mean, one of the things about working with people and doing these presentations I'm doing is to fear. We all have, the negative emotions, the fears that we have, is to see them for what there is, flip things upside down, see it in a different way, take a different perspective on it. And so at any time that things happen, understand, rightfully so, there's going to be certain things where you have to act quickly, safely, yes, but there will be other things where the fears just come about for the reasons they do. And so don't be fearful. If something happens that you don't understand, just be at peace as much as you can. Breathe in peace. Do that. So that's my key message on that. The other thing, I mean, falling in line with my doing some research on cancer, is for the recent presentation that I did with Teresa Young, who's a master Qigong, is cancer. And understanding that, and it came up today, that's why I want to bring it up, overdiagnosis and overtreatment. So in line with the sick care model is the idea that people go, we can get it early, we can get it early. What people don't understand is things can come and go in your body without you knowing it. Be out of whack because you're under stress for the reasons you are, whatever, I know, moving, changing jobs, divorce, whatever it is. And things can become, little imbalance in the body, so things are there. That ain't a good time to go to the doctor. That ain't a time. Your blood pressure's possibly up, some this, some that, but these tests are identifying. In fact, some people, their blood pressure goes up just because they're afraid that they're going to get a bad reading or a bad test. And so this overdiagnosis in cancer and overtreatment in cancer, this, I think, did they say 50% of the time, if it's your first mammogram, you could get a false reading, a false positive reading, something like that. Don't quote me on it. But the idea is, in me pouring over the information, is the fact that when people hear the word cancer, just get it out of me, just get it out of me, even though it's like a littlest thing, and it may go away on its own. So what people are doing is they're rushing out and getting the treatment before they even get the, what we'll call, a more suitable, takes much longer test to determine different things about it. Of course, when it comes back that it's negative and you've already got your breast removed, and there are literally thousands of women that get their breasts removed. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that you went through that treatment thinking that's the best thing to do quickly? You don't have to move that quickly unless your circulatory system is out of whack, and stroke and heart. Again, we're talking about the vulnerable things and the reason why we are vulnerable, unfortunately. But I wanted to bring that up. If you have never had a mammogram and you go get a mammogram, or any test for that matter, step back, understand that a lot of these tests are, they may be faulty to a certain degree. They're not accurate because they're kind of like this quickie thing, right? They can't see. That's why you have to do things. But, and just to put it out there, because you love ones with mammograms, is I remember listening to a doctor a couple of decades ago say that when he was in medical school, this is in the last 100 years or 100 years ago, they were told to never press on breast tissue. So understand that these tests can be invasive physically to your body, and that in itself can cause cancer. So ongoing use of mammograms, overdoing it in the testing field, especially with mammograms, can actually bring on cancer. Yes, the X-ray, the harmful rays are less than, but they're still toxic. They're still toxic. And they'll say, well, we've improved it. Well, what does that mean? You improved it by what, 5%? No, it's still toxic. It's still toxic. Maybe not as much. Maybe you can breathe a sigh of relief. And hey, what was happening all those years when they were using the one that had a lot more of it? And they would never admit that there was any problem with it in the first place. But, oh, now we've got it better. It's okay now. No, people, this is not cool when it comes to kind of looking at things. But anyway, there's that whole thing about the limitations on mammograms and how to prepare. I think I mentioned this already. I discovered they say in there to stop coffee for X number of days before you even get a mammogram. Now, what the hey is that all about? Anyway, I'll let you think about it. But let's just say I am far from being pro coffee at the end of the day. Far from being pro coffee. And I mean, when you read medical books from doctors years ago, and the initial research that they did with coffee, and just with 1 ounce of coffee, they showed that people's blood pressure and certain vital signs, and we're talking decades and decades ago, showed that that impacted it that quickly. And then much of the books that were out for self-diagnosis or self-treatment That's right. Doctors used to write books that you would have at home so you could flip through the pages and better understand what to do yourself. And the simple message in this one book that I poured over before I finished writing my book was coffee. Stop coffee immediately. So if you're not well, stop coffee immediately. There you go. And a follow-up, a lot of the post way of looking at things after you're feeling better or normal is to not go back to coffee for several months. Not to go back to coffee for several months. Why is that? I'm going to let you think about that. But the idea is to understand enough of the simple messages is much more practical than thinking we have to do all of this crazy stuff. 20 bottles of supplements. Cleanse till the cows come home. And I'm thinking about the health and how people do what they do. To me, simplifying things and practical is going to make a lot more sense. It's going to be a lot easier and all of that. Let's just see what else I have up. But those were the main things I really wanted to jump in today about seeing as cancer is something, so yeah, everybody's got cancer. No, what we have is we have a turnover of cells. So the cells may look mutated, or they are mutated. Mutated is kind of a crazy word, but these are old cells. Are they going to look as nice as new cells? No. If you have an old dish rag and you have a new dish rag, the old dish rag looks pretty shabby. So the cells that don't get out of the body may be accumulating in tumors. So there you go. You have these uncrazy, nice looking cells, mutated as I like to call, not crazy, something's going to jump out and bite you. That's where they like you to think it is. So you're so fearful, like, give me the treatment, before you even know that it's actually positive for all the reasons you do. So that's where we're going to end on that. But was there something else I wanted to do? No, we're going to do reading some jokes here. I was trying to think. There's always several things that kind of come in, but usually for live at 5, I'm going to say quite honestly that usually what I do is to say, what's recent? What came up today? And then my mind just kind of goes with it. It just naturally kind of flows, and I'm good with it that way. But yeah, I've been showing this people. I've showed this, so whether you've seen it or not, but this is a black walnut. And walnuts are known to be brain food. And walnuts, a black walnut, but doesn't that look like an owl? Like a wise owl? Where's wisdom come from? We're thinking the brain, the mind, healthy fats in those. So I think that's a shame that fats have gotten a bad rap, but they should, because in some ways some fats are clogging up your arteries. Some fats, not cholesterol per se, but the refined, bleached, and deodorized oils. So don't want to get away to that. Let's read a couple of jokes. How is everybody? That's the only thing about certain things here is the systems kind of change, especially on Facebook. Don't kind of see the comments the same way. That's what they do. Anyway, I'm going to read a couple of puns. I hope you're feeling good, and certain things are definitely coming up. Of course they're going to come up. The cold's going to come up. Flu. This is what happens. When the darkness, people go in. People are so busy. Seeing the holidays runs them ragged, and you need to take a breather. Take breathers every day. Stop and pause. That's what I'm doing with my walk club now. Take a minute or two. I don't look at the time. We're used to talking amongst each other, walking for an hour and talking. But I've added this piece where we're just going to the woods, into nature, and we just pause. So does that mean it has to be silent around us? No. Does that mean your mind have to be silent? No. It is a way for you to see kind of what's going through your head and what are you picking up in sounds and that way. So the pause. All right, here we go. Policeman, I'm going to have to arrest you for going swimming in this pond. The coy miss, but officer, you could have told me before I changed into my bathing suit. Policeman. Well, there isn't any law against that, miss. There you go. Yeah, think he could have said something before. Listen, miss, if you go swimming that pond, you could get, you could get arrested. In this case, in this old book of 50 years ago or more, it's about arresting. It's not about a ticket. It's about arresting. Next, the new neighbor was calling on Mrs. Jones. I hear your son is a fine football player, she said. What position does he play? Oh, Mrs. Jones answered, I think he's one of the drawbacks. Not that I know football very well. It'd be great. It's always great when I read these before. Let's go through a couple more and be either baffled together or laugh together. Two Indians were on a riverbank watching a motorboat pulling a man on water skis. After a few minutes of observation, one of the natives asked, What makes big canoe go so fast? And the other answered, Man on string chase 'em. Yeah, I guess there's a jokester there, and yeah, man on string chase 'em. One more. Clancy, say, did you know that I've got a baseball dog? Nancy, what is a baseball dog? Clancy, well, he wears a muzzle, catches flies, chases fowls, and beats it for home when he sees the catcher coming. That's very clever. Anyway, so I'm going to wish everybody a happy holiday. As I said earlier, I'm going to be at a family function next Monday. Maybe I'll come on a different day, but otherwise, I'm going to see you in the new year as far as Live at 5 goes. But again, if I can work it out, I'll do it on a different day next week. And for people who are new, yeah, post it on Rumble, post it on YouTube. And the idea is to share all kinds of things, but to bring us together, not divisive, bring in understandings that we can think about, ponder, share with each other, and just, be present to your life. Be aware, see what understandings, lessons, learning, just kind of go with it, go with the flow, be patient, all those kind of wonderful things. And I will be doing more presentations, so I'll post some of that. The Awakening You, Thursday, January, I'll post it, January the 13th, and Saturday, January 16th. So I already have several people signed up. And the idea is to, again, share information so you have a better understanding, to simplify things, help you be able to discern, and inspire, motivating, critical thinking, all those kind of things. But anyway, we'll talk soon. Take care. Bye for now, and enjoy your evening.